what you can do to be ready, whether that means you might be planning to apply for jobs or you just want to use this time of year to proactively get stuff ready in case an awesome job comes your way. Or you might be able to use this if you have like a promotion season coming up at your company too. So I am a user researcher. And the first thing I want to do is have us do a little bit of research on ourselves. So the research activity is this. It's kind of a quiz, I guess we could say. Give yourself 1 point for each of these things that you have done or had happened to you in the past 6 months. I'm super curious. I would encourage you to write that number down because I'm going to ask you the number again at the end of this. And if you're comfortable, drop it in the chat. Super curious. So let's see here. Okay. Nathan is a 4. Okay. Lots of 4s coming in. Brock, it's flying by. Okay. Lots of 4s. Okay. I see a couple of 3s. Okay. So all of you, number 1, I think it's important to do some self-reflection on your job search because sometimes you don't realize what you are doing because you're doing so many things, right? And I think it's important for you to see in the chat how many other people put the number 4, how many other people put the number 3, etc. Because I think many of you really believe that you are doomed and you're the only person who is struggling with this. And when you have that belief, it impacts your actions, right? Your thoughts impact your behavior, behavior impacts your actions, that impacts your outcomes, etc. So even before we continue in this workshop today, I really hope that just noticing that you are in company with other people who are also struggling with this, and it is not you. And we're going to talk about how we change that number for you ASAP. So what I want to do is use this workshop to really look at why this system or approach that you've been using so far has led you to whatever number you put in on that last slide, right? And how to fix this so we can take advantage of the September surge of hiring. Now, at the same time as this September surge, I've also seen people get hired all summer. And so even if you're like, there is no September surge coming, my counter argument is, okay, well, I've seen people getting hired all summer and I'm not sure why that would slow down because even as recently as August 5, I believe, we had someone get hired. And actually, what am I talking about? In the community today, we saw a post and someone else told us they have a verbal offer. So 2 today. So all these people got hired this summer. These are just some of the people at Fidelity, Liberty Mutual, Geico, Canoe Intelligence, JetBlue, Quivia, like a security company. And I'm sharing this with you to hopefully kill a myth or belief that no one's hiring in the summer because they are. So I want to share with you how those people that you just saw on those slides and these 2 people that posted in my community today, what they did to turn their job searches around so they could stand out, get those interviews, and potentially, well, in the case of all these people, get those offers, right? So I want to address another thing that Erin and Becca and I see causes people to get stuck so often, and that is this fixation of things that are in your control and not within your control. And like there's things that are always out of our control, right? In the number of people that applied to a job, the job market, pandemic, elections, ghosting, lack of feedback, quality of job descriptions, your previous experience, right? Just this morning, someone was talking to me about all these things that were troubling them in their job search. And I said, all of those things are not within your control. And I said, despite you not having consumer experience and all your experience being in business to business, it's not in your control. You just happened to get hired in business to business in the past, and now you don't have any consumer experience. That doesn't mean you can't get hired in consumer in the future. But when you focus on these things that you can't control, it really messes with your mind, right? And you start to forget about and lose focus on the things that you can actually control. And by not doing and spending time on the things that you can control in your job search, it's a lot harder than it needs to be, right? So if you are spending more time lamenting about the job search and how the system is totally broken, that's time you were not spending on your resume, your portfolio, engaging in LinkedIn, etc. And I would argue if you're focused on all these things you can't control, it kind of perpetuates like a really negative attitude. And I know for myself, when I have a negative attitude about something and then I go to work on something that I can control, I'm probably not doing my best because I have this negative attitude, right? So we really hope that after this workshop, you see and realize all of the things that are in your control in your UX job search that maybe you aren't doing right now, that for the next 30, 60 days, you say to yourself, okay, even if all these things really get under my skin and I would love to complain about them, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to see what happens. So what is in our control and what is not within our control? And I think when we focus on what's in our control, we know this September surge is coming, right? And I know people have been hired all summer, right? So what if you could use the next 30 or 60 days to really position yourself to already be applying and maybe even interviewing when things start to pick up? Because what's going to happen? There's going to be a ton of people that also are applying, etc. Except guess what? All these people over at the left, they'll be applying with crappy resumes and portfolios because they waited to do it until 3 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, and they're not at this workshop. And if you start now, you can be ahead of them. So we are going to cover what is happening in your job search, how we can fix it by using this system and these frameworks that other people use to get hired this summer. And some of you know, depending on when you RSVP'd, you know that, whoops, I'm on the wrong slide. You know that I told you that at this workshop, I was going to give you the opportunity to learn more and or work with me to help you in your job search. So I'll tell you about that at the end of this workshop, but hold tight because I know a few of you were emailing me about it before. But we want to focus on this September surge period so that you can be ready when hiring picks up, so you don't have to stay stuck, and so you can feel more powerful in your job search. Now, some of you have never heard about me before. The internet is a big place, as small as it feels sometimes. So I'm Sarah Doody. I'm a UX researcher and product designer. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've worked in various capacities, whether it's full-time, freelance, contract, etc. And since 2012, I have been doing various types of UX consulting, whether it's UX research, product design, curriculum development, UX audits, everything under this, not everything under the sun, but a lot of things within UX. And more recently, around 2017, I kind of pivoted my career into this world of being a UX career consultant. This was not part of my plan, but the researcher in me noticed this problem that existed, which was mainly people did not know how to UX their own career and their own job search, and they were coming to me for help with that. And in 2017, no one else was doing this, and here we are today. So that is a little bit about me. And one of the things that keeps me doing what I do is the impact. And I will never forget receiving this LinkedIn message from this person. They had been struggling in their job search. They were laid off, and they ended up accepting a job with a 107% increase in total compensation from their previous job. And they said, where'd it go? My jaw dropped. I told my fiance and my folks, they all cried, just insane. And it's one of those quotes that will stick with me forever. And I'm like, this is amazing. So this is why I do what I do. All right. So everyone who's come to me for help with their job search, though, they've leveraged these 3 strategies. We are going to go into great detail on these 3 strategies. But the 3 strategies, you need a design strategy for your career. You need a marketing strategy for your career and your job search. And you need a sales strategy for your career and job search. Now, it only works if you have all 3, right? I know this because when people come to me, I can tell they don't have all 3 legs of the stool in place. And you need all 3 legs. You can't just have amazing resume and portfolio, etc., if you also don't have a strategic design strategy and a strategic sales strategy, etc. So we need all three of these. And as we're going through the following slides, I really encourage you to be thinking about which legs of the stool are missing in your UX job search. So, how might we, right? You are probably asking yourself all the time, how might I stand out from hundreds of other candidates, right? How do I stand out to recruiters and hiring managers? And those are important questions to answer, but the more important how might we that I think we need to understand is this one, right? It is how might we understand the user flow of how recruiters and hiring managers approach hiring, right? Because we're all here, we're all UX people. I hope we all believe in research, and this is research, right? We need to understand the user flow of UX recruiters and hiring managers and how they approach hiring. So let's think about it. This is a funnel, obviously, and funnel of hiring, right? It kind of starts at the top with hundreds of people potentially. It moves through various phases. We don't have to agree on all the names of the steps of the funnel. This is just an illustration, but the idea is we want to get from the top to the bottom, right? And the question is, how do we get to the top to the bottom? And in business, this is happening all of the time. So let's look at a few examples. So when you need shoes, you're faced with hundreds of options. You go through some comparison, online shopping, window shopping, etc. Eventually, you buy the shoe. You need a hotel. You're comparing hotels. This was literally me last night looking at hotels in Amsterdam and like 27 tabs open, right? And what did I do today? I had my friend who was a travel agent decide for me and book it. But we go through this decision process and process of elimination down to the decision over and over and over for so many areas of our lives. Now, here is the thing. Companies are spending millions of dollars to influence you to hopefully buy the shoes from them. And companies intentionally research and design the heck out of all of this stuff that needs to happen in order for you to buy their shoes, in order for you to book their hotel, right? And how do they do that? They do that through this framework called AIDA. You're going to hear these 4 letters a lot today, and you cannot unsee what we're going to look at. And this framework, it's been around for a long, long time. I should go back and trace the origin of it. I read about it in a marketing and business book over 20 years ago, and I have never forgotten it. It has been so influential in everything I do. But what is this AIDA framework, and how does it influence us to go and eventually buy products from one company versus another company? Okay, so first, we have to understand, what does AIDA mean, right? So AIDA, first A is attention, right? Companies want to get your attention. And during the pandemic, companies got my attention with all these posts on Instagram about air fryers. And I didn't even know what an air fryer was. Those social posts got my attention, and then I became interested in air fryers. And I started window shopping for air fryers and, comparing, etc. Then my desire, the D, for air fryers grew the more they started emailing me about the air fryers, right? And then ultimately, yes, I did take action, our final A, and I purchased the air fryer. So that is AIDA. They want to get your attention. They want to capture your interest. They want to build desire to push you to action, right? And that's how it plays out. So we have our original funnel over here, and then we have AIDA kind of going down the funnel. That is how AIDA works. Now, in order for AIDA to work though, and this is really important, it needs all 3 of these things, which is why we talked about this in the beginning. So in order to create attention, interest, desire, and action, you need to have all 3 of these things. So let's look at them really quick. Like when it comes to the design of a shoe or an air fryer, design means like the product's features and benefits, right? What makes it unique? What does it do? What does it look like, etc. In the case of the air fryer, like what color is it? How big is it? What will it look like on my counter? Does it have a timer, etc.? That's design, right? Market, obviously, how do people become aware of this product, right? Social media, advertisement, emails, etc., etc., etc. Marketing is about awareness and visibility, right? And then sales is really about relationships. And you might wonder, like, how is an air fryer company having a relationship with me? Well, there's a thing called email. And the more they email you and the more personalized those emails are and the more timely they are, etc., that is them starting to build a relationship with you. And we'll get more into this because I know this one seems a little bit abstract here, but sales is really about personalized communication with the people you are trying to move to action. So now here's the really important part. And here's why I just gave you a crash course in marketing, essentially. This can also be applied to your career. So you have to buy into my philosophy since 2017 that you have to think of yourself as a product, right? Or what I often call the product of you. And to advance your career, you need all three of these things. And so let's look at what design, market, and sell means in the product of you, right? So in the case of the design of you, it's things like, well, what are your features and benefits? Meaning, what are your skills? What is your experience? Where are you headed? Just like a product has a roadmap, you need a roadmap too, right? Knowing how to communicate all of that, etc. So that's what we mean when we talk about the design of you. When it comes to marketing, marketing is really about the marketing materials. There's really three core ones: your resume, your portfolio, and your LinkedIn. Sure, there's like other things you could do, but those are the three ones that are really important because those are the three marketing materials that people are really using to generate that first impression and make that decision as to if they're going to give you an interview or not, if they're going to move you through to the next round of interviews or not, etc. So that's marketing when it comes to the product of you. And when it comes to the sales or selling part of you, this is where it gets into relationships. And I know many of you might be cringing and thinking like, oh, this sounds gross, or I hate reaching out to people and I don't know how to do this, etc. And when it comes to you, the relationship component is just being about being very intentional about creating and nurturing relationships before you need them, so that if you are applying to a job at Delta Airlines, maybe you already know someone at Delta Airlines. Maybe you've been in casual conversation with them or not so casual conversation with them for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, who knows? Because relationships are so important in the job search, but it's also about being mindful of how can you create really strong human connection, even with people that you are meeting for the first time, like in an interview setting where you've never interacted with that person before. So relationships really has two parts, like these ongoing relationships and also creating human connection with people that we're first meeting so that they remember you and you make a strong impression on them during the interview. All right, so that's what design, marketing, and sales mean when it comes to the product of you. And if we kind of reverse engineer what happens when you don't have these things in place, and feel free to comment in the chat here, but like if you don't have a strong design strategy for the product of you, you're probably going to be suffering from what we like to call identity fog, meaning you're not sure where you want to head in the future. Maybe you've been working in UX for 5, 10, 15, 25 years, and you're not sure on your past, let alone your future, right? Maybe you doubt your skills and experience. Maybe you think your experience is no longer relevant or outdated or who knows what. But this whole feeling of identity fog, I'm curious if anyone feels like they're stuck in that. I have the chat over here. That's why I'm looking over there. But that's what happens when you don't have a really strong design strategy for you, right? Then how do you know you might not have a strong marketing strategy? Well, this is when you are what we call an invisible genius, meaning you think to yourself, I'm amazing. I have all this awesome skills and experience, etc. Why can no one else see it? It probably means that you do have awesome skills and experience, but they can't see it because your resume, your portfolio, and your LinkedIn, or some combination of, are not doing a good job at communicating your genius, right? So that's how you would know if maybe you have a lack of a marketing strategy happening. Now, when it comes to that sales strategy, this is where you feel like you kind of are a stranger, meaning when you reach out to people, you send messages, you send emails, people never reply, they ghost you, etc. It's probably a sign that you did not have an existing relationship with them. Or if you did, it was kind of just dark because you didn't talk to them for 7 years, and then you asked them to give you a referral at the company you applied to, and like they don't ever remember you, right? Or they don't remember what it's like to work with you. So if you feel like you're a stranger just screaming into the void of LinkedIn messages and emails and stuff, maybe it means you're lacking a really strong sales strategy in your journey of the product of you. So with all that said, we're going to dive deep into each of these 3 areas next, but I'm curious, where do you feel like you're stuck right now? Is there one of these 3 legs of the stool that you're like, yep, that leg doesn't even exist, or it's broken, etc.? So I'm super curious here. Let me know in the chat. Let's see. All right. Whoops. I see. Jonathan said, too niche, beyond senior despite 10 years. Okay. Svani said, interview panel rounds, selling with a bit of design, Victor said. Oh, Shandi said, I can't see my unfair advantage. I love that phrasing, Shandi. Mike said, networking has been a struggle. Yep, it does not come naturally to everyone, that's for sure. Precious said, selling. Andrew said, marketing, selling. Okay, definitely identity fog. Okay, resume doesn't stand out. Okay, I'm gonna read. We save these chats so I can read it after, but I'm glad that it's starting to help you hone in on what parts might be needing more attention than others. Because I think one of the things that you're so stuck in is you don't even know where to start, right? And part of what we're doing today is hopefully helping you prioritize maybe which leg of the stool you need to focus on first. So let's think about, though, our funnel journey again, in this case of hiring, and think about, well, where does this AIDA framework impact and come into the hiring process? Well, you have to, like, if the recruiter's shopping for a candidate, here's what might be playing out, right? You're one of the people who applies, and you catch their attention because something makes the recruiter think you are qualified. That something could be some combination of your resume, your LinkedIn, your portfolio. Maybe you wrote a cover letter. Maybe you also sent them a message. Who knows? But you caught their attention. And that is how you're going to move down into them moving you further through the interview process, right? Maybe you do a screener call. They're like, whoa, this person really seems like they're a fit. We want to know more about them. We want to hear more about their experience. So they're even more interested now. And then they invite you to interview with various members of the team, etc. And that desire starts to build, and they're like, yes, this could be the one, right? And then they send you an offer. So that's AIDA at play at a macro level in the job search, but you're also going to see how this can play out just on your resume, just on your LinkedIn, just on your portfolio, etc. So let's dive into the design aspect for a second. So design in a product, we already talked about what design in a product means, right? They stand out because of their features, benefits, colors, literal industrial design, etc., right? And customers make decisions based on the product's features. In the same way, you as a candidate are going to stand out because of your design and your features, etc. And this only works if you get really specific about what you do and what your skills and experience are. Because one of the things that I see all the time is that so many people in UX and product kind of describe themselves in a very vague fashion, and everyone sounds like everyone else. Everyone's just a UX or product designer that wants to make products that change the world, right? And some variation of that. And so if someone's reading your resume, the about page on your portfolio, etc., we need to make sure that yours does not sound like that example I just gave. And that can only happen if you get specific about what the literal design of you is. So we have to do an inventory really of what are your skills? What is your work experience? What life experience do you bring that maybe is relevant, especially if you're a career switcher? Do you have like industry specific knowledge? Maybe you have a really deep understanding of healthcare or ed tech or I don't know, who knows what, right? Other things like even character traits and personality traits, that all feeds into the design of you. And when you get really, really clear about the design of you, it makes everything else easier. And we often compare this design of you step to like creating a thesis for an essay, because if you try to write an essay without a thesis, that's really difficult, right? All the paragraphs are going to be disjointed and nothing's going to flow together. Same thing with your job search. The design strategy for you, that then informs the marketing strategy. It informs your resume, your LinkedIn, your portfolio, etc. It's probably going to also inform how you talk about yourself when you are having phone calls with people and emailing people, etc. And so Katie, you can watch Katie's interview later, but I want to just kind of give you some people to watch their interviews later if they resonate with you. But Katie was laid off from a job. She had, gosh, I think it was like 15 years of experience in UX or something, maybe more. And she struggled to figure out like, who am I? Why am I here? What am I going to do next type thing, right? And she ended up working with me and my team, really dialed into that design part of that Venn diagram, which made everything else easier. And then she got hired as a VP of UX at JP Morgan Chase. But you can watch Katie's interview there, but it's really powerful to be able to dial in that design strategy of you, because it really does feed into everything else. Leon wrote a book about wireframing, had been at the same company for 11 years, and similar to Katie, was laid off. And he was at this point, similar to Katie, of who am I now that I haven't had to do a job search in 11 years? Who do I want to be in the future? What the heck have I done for the past 11 years? What do I want to keep doing? What do I not want to do, etc. And once he really dialed that in by creating what I call a career roadmap, that then allowed him to crank out the resume, the portfolio, the LinkedIn, etc., and build these really strategic relationships that led to him getting hired. So if that resonates with you, I'll give you a link to watch Leon's interview later. But like really tactically, when it comes to the design of you, that really involves doing some research on yourself and auditing your past and really evaluating, what have I done? What do I like doing? What do I want to stop doing, etc. Then thinking forward and figuring out, what do I want to do? What do I not want to do? Are there specific industries? Are there specific sizes of teams, etc., etc.? And then creating what I like to call a compass statement. You could also think of it as like an elevator pitch or about me statement, or a thesis, if you will, thesis statement, which you can use as an internal filter for how you approach everything else in your job search, but also you can use when you are telling other people when they ask, tell me a little bit about yourself. So those are all the things that go into the design of you. And this is why the design your career is the first sprint that people go through when they work with me on their job search, because it really is like creating a thesis and it makes everything else so much easier. So when it comes to the market step though, so what do successful products do to market themselves, right? Well, they do things to increase their visibility, and they want to stay top of mind so that when someone is thinking of, in this case, buying an air fryer, they think of the company Dash. It's why companies like Nike and Starbucks, McDonald's and Southwest Airlines and all these big companies spend millions and billions of dollars on advertising every single year, even though we've all heard of these companies. It's like they don't stop marketing once everyone's heard of them. They keep marketing so they are top of mind, so that when you need the shoe, the kitchen appliance, the coffee, whatever, you go to that company because they were always marketing to keep themselves visible to you, right? So, social media, email, radio ads, Spotify ads, digital ads, print ads in your junk mail, etc., right? And in the same way, you as a candidate will stand out because of how you market yourself. And companies have marketing materials, and you have marketing materials too. And these marketing materials are really important in, number one, creating that first impression that catches people's attention, that A, right, in AIDA. So those marketing materials catch their attention, and then they invite you to the interview, or they move you along in the interview process, etc., right? And so we need to be extremely intentional about our marketing materials, both the content and the design, so that they are doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us when it comes to helping you stand out and make that first impression. And so, like I said earlier, the primary core marketing materials for you are your resume, your portfolio, and your LinkedIn. I would also say additional things could be like your LinkedIn posts, what you comment on LinkedIn, even things like your cover letter, even messages you're sending on LinkedIn, emails you're sending. You can almost think of these like as little breadcrumbs out there that are leaving opportunities to create or break the first impression that people have about you. And let's look at a few examples here. So, like when it comes to the content and the design, because we have to look at both of those things together. So how could we potentially optimize a resume so that people actually spend more than 6 seconds on it? Well, we would do something like this. Meredith Jackson is a placeholder name, but this resume is longer than 1 page. I want to say that up front. It's chopped off, as you can see at the bottom. It's longer than 1 page. Your resume should be longer than 1 page. It's a story for another day. But if we want to create a strong first impression, we need to give them a resume that's easy to skim, easy to scan, uses basic design principles like hierarchy, layout, etc. So a human sees this and is like, I am actually going to read this because it's not all in 5-point font and it's smushed onto 1 page. But it's also about the design, right? It's hard to see, but this text up here is essentially Meredith's about me statement. And it says, I'm an end-to-end product designer with over 5 years of startup experience. I have a BFA in art and design and love diving into the data so that together we can build products that empower others. That is something that could help catch someone's attention. And it also doesn't say, hi, I'm Meredith. I'm a product designer that wants to help create products that change the world, you know? So specific is what we want to do as we are communicating who we are and what we do. Now, a LinkedIn profile, similarly, we want that LinkedIn profile to be catching people's attention to hopefully have them reach out to us, tell us about a role they're hiring for, click to our profile if our profile's coming up, say, even in the search results before we even get to this page, right? But we have to be intentional and pay attention to the content and the design of this LinkedIn profile. So it's things like maximizing the use of that top banner real estate, right? That photo that you took of the ocean, it's a nice photo, but is it communicating stuff about you and your experience? No. Is Meredith's? Yes, because Meredith put part of her about me here. I can't read it, but that's what that is. And similarly, Meredith did a really strong LinkedIn headline, filled out all the experience, etc. Same thing with your portfolio. They're going to spend more than 1 minute on it if you do things to show your not just what you did, but why you did it, how you did it, what happened, what tension was involved in the project, right? Like, were there moments where there were disagreements, where research proved you wrong? So that's what people want to see. They don't just want to see this kind of like cookbook style portfolio that just has beautiful deliverables and no story. And so that is why it's so important that you first spend the time in that design part of our Venn diagram so you can really be specific about what you need to be communicating about yourself so that it then comes through in your resume, portfolio, and LinkedIn. And here's an awesome story. So this person really dialed in the design of themselves and identified they wanted to work in STEM. And then what did they do? And I'm going to paraphrase the screenshot, but they said, after creating my career roadmap, I realized I want to work in STEM. Immediately, I went and updated my LinkedIn profile to mention that I wanted to pursue roles in STEM or EdTech. And then they said a few days later, a recruiter messaged me that she saw my profile specifically about wanting a job in STEM. Long story short, this person interviewed for the role, did a few more interviews, and got the job. That is all because they got specific about, in this case, wanting to work in STEM or EdTech, and they communicated that on their LinkedIn, and someone was able to then find them on LinkedIn because they were looking for someone who did UX and wanted to work in STEM. That is the power of getting clear on the design of you and then communicating it in your marketing materials. All right, another example is someone here. Jaden is someone who tweaked her marketing materials because she had been unemployed for a while because of a career break. And she had her resume and she wasn't really confident in her resume because it had this gap, etc. And instead of looking at that career break as a negative, she went back and really owned that career break and went back and looked at all of the experience she had and optimized her resume so that she had stronger resume bullet points, etc., and ended up getting hired. I forget how quickly, but part of it was getting over this hurdle of thinking that the career break was a negative and then letting that kind of prevent her, block her from getting to work on her resume, portfolio, etc., because she was kind of like swirling over in the design circle here of like, who am I? Am I even hireable after a career break? I don't know. And then when it came to working on her resume and working on her portfolio, etc., she just wasn't in a great headspace to do it. So when it comes to the marketing of you, resume, portfolio, LinkedIn, we need the resume that gets interviews, the portfolio that stands out, and the LinkedIn that brings people to you. All right, so when it comes to the sales strategy, what does that mean for companies? So companies, they're really selling through relationships that are timely and that are personalized. They're trying to put their product in front of the right person at the right time with some personalization. That's what they're trying to do. That's what sales was really all about. And how do they do that? Well, we know, we work in this industry. Companies are sitting on tons of data about us, and they use that data, even though it's algorithmic, etc., to then try and push the right offer at the right time to us. Like a very simple example is when you get the birthday coupon from your favorite store, right? It's an example of a relationship. Now, is like an algorithm sending that? Yes. But do you still feel special a little bit? Maybe, depending on who you are. But that is an example of trying to tailor your message and your positioning to the people you're trying to have purchase your product, right? And in the same way, when it comes to you, candidates who really stand out, it's largely because of their ability to create connection with people, maintain and nurture relationships, and those things help you do better in an interview. It helps people remember you that you worked with 3 years ago, 6 years ago, so that when you do reach out to them because they work at a company where you want to apply, they're going to remember you and they're going to remember what it was like to work with you because you stayed in touch and you didn't just not talk to them for 6 years, right? And so this idea of relationships and selling in your job search is about being intentional about who we are engaging with, building relationships with, who we're nurturing relationships with, and then that comes through in your interview skills or when you ask someone for a referral. It also comes through in your presentation skills, right? So we want to be really intentional about who we're having relationships with, not just in our job search, but in general. And then if you're especially actively in a job search, like trying to nurture the relationships with people that you might ask a favor of in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So, this is what happens though when you focus on relationships. So last week, I did a Q&A with a couple of people that were hired this summer, and they got hired because of many things, but here's how a couple of them got hired. Well, one of them got hired, one of them is in active interviews, but one of them had the CEO of a company reach out to her on LinkedIn. Why? Because Laura, this person, Laura optimized her LinkedIn profile based on everything we already talked about today, which meant the CEO could find her on LinkedIn. The CEO reached out. They were chatting back and forth on LinkedIn messages, etc. A relationship is born. Laura didn't just ghost the person or think, oh, this is a fake or something, right? Laura engaged, vetted the person, started to build a relationship with this person, was invited to interviews, did well in the interviews, etc., and was hired on August, I think it was the 5th, but I could be wrong, sometime this month. And you can watch Laura talk about this on a webpage later. But another thing about Laura's story beyond this relationship that bloomed with the CEO of the company she was hired at, she also only had one project in her portfolio. And you'll see in a moment, I think she got hired like 6 weeks after starting to work with me, but I have to get back to you on that. But that is the power of relationships. And someone else who I'll show you, well, actually, they're not in this slide deck. They had a recruiter reach out to them on LinkedIn. And again, that formed a relationship. They were able to go back and forth, made a connection. The recruiter then invited them to interviews, etc. And cross our fingers, they get the offer. So that is the power of relationships. Another thing that is really powerful when it comes to relationships, and some of these people I've been showing you, is with this job search program that I run, I guess I've created kind of like a UX organization or community, because now we have 750 people who are essentially hiring each other. So if you're kind of shy about relationships and struggle with finding people to engage with and maintaining those, etc., that's one of the cool things about what I do in the work I do, is that I'm really building an awesome community as well. A couple of more things about relationships that I think are really interesting. Stephen was switching into user experience from podcasting and kind of like business consulting. And he realized, frankly, one of his strengths in life is relationships, because he worked in podcasting and business and was working with a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And he was able to really leverage his relationship building skills in his job search and interviews, etc. And you can watch Stephen's story later, but Stephen, long story, got hired and now hires alumni of this program I run to work with him, because Stephen started a user research agency. So what are the 3 components of having a strong sales strategy for your job search and career? It's about building the right relationships with the right people at the right time. It's also about really being intentional about your job search strategy, not just kind of playing the numbers game and applying to hundreds of jobs, but instead applying to fewer jobs, which gives you the time and energy to do activities that can help nurture the relationships with those people who are hiring for those roles that you did apply to. And also it just has to do with showing up really intentionally and consistently on LinkedIn or elsewhere. Love it or hate it, LinkedIn is where a lot of recruiters and people hiring hang out. So if you are in an active job search, it's really valuable to hang out there and post. Be smart about what you post. Because if you're just posting like cool, neat, nice, interesting, like one-word comments and stuff, that's not memorable, right? If you want to build relationships, you have to have a conversation. So instead of just dropping thumbs up and reactions and one-word comments everywhere, like try and use every time you type into the LinkedIn comment box as an opportunity to potentially like take the conversation further. And maybe you find sometimes someone replies back and you're like, let's get on a call about this or something. That's how relationships are born. But relationships can't be born if you're just commenting, cool, neat, thanks, whatever. Okay, so to recap, AIDA, what does it stand for? Attention, interest, desire, and action. That is at play during many scenarios in your job search, right? At a macro level, also at a micro level. Let's look at a resume. So this recruiter comes on LinkedIn, they're on your profile, and your profile headline, which says, let me see if I could read it, principal product designer with 8 years of experience in health, fitness, and finance. I did it. That is going to catch their attention, right? Also, the banner could catch their attention. And then when their attention is caught, it's more likely to suck them down this page. Like I should have almost overlaid this diagram kind of on the LinkedIn, but hopefully you get the idea here. So interest, it's going to pull them down. And then maybe they actually read and click view more on your about section, and the about section pops down, I guess. And then they read that. And then they keep going because their desire is now building to learn more about you. And they're thinking, this person sounds like they have a lot of the experience in the job description that I'm hiring for, etc., right? And that desire is building, and then they take action. And in this case, maybe they click message on your profile, just like what happened to Laura. Like I said, that CEO found her on LinkedIn, sent her a message. The CEO did this, guys. That's what happened to Laura. But similar, not just on your LinkedIn profile, but even if someone's doing a search and they're on the people tab of search results, it could still be happening, right? What's going to catch their attention? The headline, because that's all that shows up, your LinkedIn headline. And then in some cases, like interest and desire aren't really happening. So just how it is. But what happens? Your headline catches their attention. And if this was Laura's search or the search results, and this was Laura, that CEO was like, whoa, this headline, this sounds like a fit. I'm going to connect with Laura, and I'm the CEO. I'm going to connect with Laura, and I'm going to tell her about this job that I'm hiring for. That's how Laura got hired, or got the interview, I guess. Same thing on your resume, right? The about me on your resume catches their attention. They become more interested. They go down, they actually read, they're excited to learn more, and then they take action and they invite you to an interview. They probably just invite you to interview. I was going to say they pick up the phone, but I don't know that if recruiters are calling you, it might be a scam, at least in that first outreach. All right. So here's the thing. One of the reasons that we see a lot of people get stuck in all this is because you spend most of your time in the marketing circle of all of this. So I'm curious, no judgment, but how many of you are thinking to yourself, yeah, I kind of spent a lot of time over in the marketing circle. I did things like redesigning my portfolio, redoing my resume, tweaking my LinkedIn, overthinking cover letters, email subjects, and all these things, right? This is so me. In the loop now. Yep, yes, sure, yep. Okay, gotcha. You're stuck here. See, guys, I said I'm a researcher and I did my research. I'm still doing my research. But yes, you're stuck here. And what does that mean? It means you're not doing all these other things, right? Or it means you're rushing these things. It means you're rushing that about me statement that you wrote. And it kind of sounds like 50 other people's about me statements. It means you're not really building relationships, or you're just applying to hundreds of jobs versus applying to fewer jobs. And really, what I like to say, like, apply to fewer jobs, but nurture the applications for the jobs you apply to. That's a whole other conversation. Maybe you're not showing up on LinkedIn, etc., or you're just posting cool, neat, thanks, thumbs up type stuff, right? And back to our stool, right? We said that we need to have all three of these in place. We're going to get to some ideas here, but I want to remember what your score was from earlier. I know a bunch of you said it was 4, right? And I know you have your numbers, so we're going to move on, right? All right, whatever your score was, I want to reassure you that the solution is a UX job search system that addresses all three of these areas. Because this is really important. If you are feeling like you are having a ton of identity fog when it comes to the design of you, right? Or if you're feeling like that invisible genius where you have great skills, experience, etc., but for whatever reason, when you apply for jobs, it's like you're invisible. That's likely because there's a problem with your marketing materials. And if you feel like you are suffering from that stranger syndrome, which we talked about, that is a sign that there is something wrong, or maybe you are even missing this idea of a sales strategy for you. I want to zoom out a little bit and get back to the idea of AIDA: attention, interest, desire, and action, right? And one of the reasons you're probably not even capturing the attention and interest of people involved in the hiring process is because you are telling a disjointed story about yourself and your experience because of the way you have approached your job search, right? If your approach is totally disjointed, meaning it looks something like this, where instead of following an actual process and a system, you're just out there piecing together information from all over. You have a ton of tips from LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube and Reddit and Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and coffee dates and everywhere. And you're kind of just like pulling stuff out from thin air, trying to apply it. That's how you end up with a disjointed story as a candidate, because you are piecing together rogue advice and tips, etc. And people get hired, do so because they have a strategy versus they're kind of just like throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what happens. So I want to come back to our diagram that now you're very familiar with. And in addition to all three of these parts, the design strategy, the marketing strategy, and the sales strategy, there are three core things within each of these areas. So now that you've been able to learn more about these and hear more about the details of each of these strategies, I really want you to think about, okay, within the design strategy, what am I missing? Have I audited my past? Have I plotted my future? Am I articulating my story right? In the marketing part of the strategy, is your resume getting interviews? Is your portfolio standing out? Is your LinkedIn attracting people? Are people reaching out to you on LinkedIn for roles that they're hiring for? And then lastly, with that sales strategy, are you building relationships? Do you have a strategy, a design strategy for your job search? And are you showing up consistently? And so rank yourself on all of these things. Maybe even use like a green, yellow, red color coding system if you want to screenshot this, or just mentally rank yourself. But I encourage you to do that and choose the three that you feel like are the most in need of work. Now imagine that in the next 30, 60, 90 days, you could go from something like this, where you're stuck in identity fog, you're that invisible genius, and you're suffering from stranger syndrome, to instead having totally clear design for the product of you. Magnetic marketing that brings people to you, that leads to more interviews, that helps you attract interest, attention, desire, that moves people to take action and offer you that interview, to move you on to the next interview, etc. And that you were really confident in the relationships that you are building and nurturing for this specific chapter of your career, whether you're actively a job searching right now, you're planning to job search soon, or maybe you're planning to seek out freelance clients, right? All of those scenarios require relationships. So for all of these things, I have proven templates, training, tools, and systems that help you stop piecing it together all on your own like this, and instead approach this with the strategy that it deserves. So if you want to find out more about what it would look like to have me help you with your UX job search, whether you're actively job searching, you want to be ready in the future, you're trying to get promoted, or maybe you even want to pursue freelance UX work, then all of these systems and principles apply to all three of those scenarios, because Whether you're trying to get promoted, hired, or secure freelance clients, you need to have a solid design strategy, a solid marketing strategy, and a solid sales strategy. So I invite you to find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. And to keep things organized, really on my end, please message me the acronym AIDA, AIDA. That will be like our little secret word. So I know that you watched this video and that's why you're reaching out to me. So if we're already connected, send me a LinkedIn message with the acronym AIDA. And if we're not connected, when you connect with me, add a note to your connection request and put AIDA. So I know that's why you are connecting with me. And after that, I'll send you some details about what it would look like to work together. Totally low key, no pressure. If it works, great. If not, at least you've learned something from this video today. And that's all for now. So I will talk to you soon, and maybe I will see you in my inbox very soon.